The Life of Steven Universe, Part 1, Steven Universe. Steven Quartz Universe is the titular main protagonist of the Steven Universe franchise. He's the son of Greg Universe and Rose Quartz, the only known hybrid of a human and gem, and the first crystal gem of human descent. As a result of his parentage, Steven is an extraordinarily unique being with innate powers beyond that of normal humans and gems. While he was only a child, Steven steadily grew from a tag-along to the crystal gems into the heart of the team, thanks to his kind-hearted nature and resourcefulness. Steven is devoted to protecting humanity and helping those in need, just as Rose Quartz did, and though her monumental legacy once forced Steven to live in her shadow, he has since surpassed her by ending the authoritarian practices of the Great Diamond Authority and establishing peace across the galaxy. However, the consequences of his mother's mistakes continue to haunt Steven and those he cares about to his growing frustration. But more on that later. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Steven Universe. This video is only gonna have the first half of Season 1, and we're gonna do the rest later. Before we begin, we publish a new video almost every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media as well. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Gem Glow. The series begins with Steven visiting the Big Donut, where he becomes distraught after finding out that the Cookie Cat ice cream brand has been discontinued because of a recent competitor. Lion Liquors has become more popular in sales. As an act of consolation, Sadie lets him take the freezer they were originally sold in. When he gets home, he finds his surrogate moms, Amethyst, Pearl, and Garnet, locked into a battle with centipedals that have invaded Steven's room. They destroyed most of them, but didn't find the gems they usually receive after poofing the gem's form. Garnet believes that the mother centipedal must be nearby, controlling the others. Steven drives one off the fridge and finds a lot of Cookie Cats in the freezer. The gems explain how they got some from a nearby factory since they knew they were his favorite and decided to buy the last remaining batch for him. Delighted, he begins to sing the Cookie Cat theme song from a television advertisement, which ends up being full of foreshadowing, but we're gonna get to all that stuff later. He then takes a bite of Cookie Cat and his gem starts to glow. Amethyst tells him to try to summon his weapon, but Steven doesn't know how. Eventually, his gem stops glowing, leaving Steven disappointed. He asks to be taught how to summon a weapon, and Pearl volunteers to show him first. Pearl takes him to a tree with petals falling continuously and tells him that each petal falling to the ground is not moving randomly, but precisely based on the physical properties of the earth, and that this can be mastered by training hard. She then summons her spear as a demonstration. Steven picks up and throws a handful of petals, but still doesn't understand what Pearl is trying to say. Steven then goes to Amethyst, who is behind the Big Donut. Amethyst explains that whenever she needs her weapon, it just comes to her naturally. She demonstrates by pulling her whip out and slicing a dumpster in half. Steven is lost because what Amethyst said was the opposite of what Pearl told him. Lars then comes out of the Big Donut, sees the dumpster cut in half, and exclaims, "Again?" Steven then visits Garnet last at the top of the Crystal Temple. He asks if he has to train hard and not worry at the same time, to which he replies affirmatively. She tells him that the alternative is to connect with all living matter and energy around him, which is her method for pulling out her gauntlets. This leaves Steven, confused, to say the least. Steven tries to recreate what happened when his gem first started to glow. He attempts to make everything exactly as it was before and sings his song again. This fails, and he wonders whether he's even cut out to be a crystal gem. The others say that he's silly and reassure him that he is one of them. He eats another Cookie Cat in reassurance when his gem suddenly starts glowing brighter than it did before. It glows to the point where his weapon is finally revealed, a shield. The others bask and Steven gets too excited, losing control of it. His shield starts bouncing around the house and smashes into the TV, which Amethyst finds hilarious, and Pearl groans because she's probably the one who's going to have to clean it up. Steven concludes that he can summon his weapon by eating ice cream. When Pearl looks at the wrapper, wondering what its ingredients are, the ground suddenly starts rumbling, and the centipedal mother, a corrupted nephrite, but we'll get into that later, appears outside. Amethyst, Pearl, and Garnet go outside, but tell Steven to stay inside. They engage in battle, but Steven grabs the Cookie Cat freezer along with the Cookie Cats and goes outside to help. He finds that the gems are losing the battle. Steven captures the monster's attention and eats a Cookie Cat ready to summon the shield. However, he fails to summon it and decides to retreat. He desperately eats the remaining Cookie Cats, wondering why it's not working. When he sees Nephrite damage the Cookie Cat freezer, he's distraught and gets a new wave of courage. He grabs the freezer by the plug and throws the broken freezer at Nephrite, electrocuting her. The gems then defeat Nephrite, and Garnet bubbles her gems, sending it to the temple. Steven buries the wrappers of the cookie cats and begins to sob. With the aid of the crystal gems, he resolves that he's unable to summon his weapon by eating ice cream. Then the gems cheer him up by saying that he'll figure out how his gem works in his own Steven-y way. He then starts feeling a bit sick and states he might have eaten too many cookie cats. This causes Pearl and Amethyst to laugh, because human misfortune is very funny. Before the iris closes in on him, Steven laughs anxiously, then retches. Laser light cannon. Steven and Amethyst are at Beach City Walk Fry's ordering fry bits when Amethyst notices an enormous orb hurtling towards the earth. You know, as you do. Amethyst and Steven join Garnet and Pearl at the beach to come up with a plan to stop the orb, referred to as a red eye. Garnet tries throwing Amethyst at it, but to no avail. The only way the crystal gems can think of destroying it is to use Rose Quartz's laser light cannon. The issue, though, is that none of them know where it is. Steven suggests getting his father Greg to help, even though the other gems tell Steven that his dad probably wouldn't have it on him. While he's gone, Garnet continues to launch Amethyst into the ball, but she merely slides off it and plops into the ocean below. Not that it deters her. Steven goes to his dad's van and tries to wake him up by jumping on the vehicle's roof. He sets off the car alarm, which causes Greg Universe to jump out of the van. Steven tells him about the problem at hand, to which Greg suggests that he might have the laser light cannon in his old storage unit. They drive to the storage unit, and Steven goes inside using a flashlight tied around his head. While trying to get past an array of junk, Greg tells him about his mother, Rose Quartz. He tells him that they had met at one of his concerts and that she gave up her physical form to give birth to Steven. Just as he says that, Steven steps on something that produces a loud crack. Steven looks down and sees a picture of his parents from before he was born. The picture frame's glass is now broken and the frame itself is cracked. Steven admits that he broke the picture, but his father shrugs it off and simply recites the quote, "If every pork chop were perfect, we wouldn't have hot dogs." As he says this, a pink glow emanates from the back of the unit. Steven follows the glow to the very back and finds the laser light cannon. Greg and Steven drive it to the beach, though the cannon weighs down the back of the vehicle considerably while listening to Greg's old album and his hit song, "Let Me Drive My Van Into Your Heart." Greg is embarrassed to have the song played, but Steven of course loves it. As the universes arrive at the beach, they come across the gems still launching Amethyst at the red eye, which is getting dangerously close to impact with the Earth's surface. Pearl is shocked to see that Greg actually had the cannon all along. Suddenly, the eye starts emitting a gravitational pull and begins destroying everything in its range. Quickly, the group tries to activate the cannon. They try various methods, including looking for a switch and putting Steven's gem near the cannon itself, but nothing works. Greg reassures them that they'll find another way, and Steven agrees, repeating the quote, "If every pork chop were perfect, we wouldn't have hot dogs." He then realizes that speaking this is the key to activating the cannon, which glows and opens up in a manner similar to flower petals unraveling, and the barrel falls to the sand. The gems help Steven lift and aim it at the red eye. When the light cannon fully charges, out blasts a strong beam of light in the vague shape of Rose Quartz, which swiftly destroys the incoming entity. The red eye explodes into many fragments, damaging several parts of the city before the damage is overshadowed by the relief of getting rid of the danger just in time. Amid the celebration, Greg notices that his van is in the ocean. Steven starts to comfort him with the pork chop, saying, but Greg cuts him off shouting, "I live in there!" The two of them then try to pull the van out of the tide as the episode ends. Cheeseburger Backpack. The episode begins with Steven sitting on top of his mailbox singing "Hey Mr. Postman." Jamie the postman arrives and gives Steven a package, a cheeseburger backpack, exciting him as he had expected it. After he takes numerous objects out of the bag, Jamie finds Steven's package from a company called Wacky Sack Supply Company. Steven eagerly runs into the house and sees Garnet covered in feathers. Amethyst is trying to get a large egg into the fridge while Pearl is discouraging her. Pearl begins to tell Steven about how they're only in for a minute because they need to put the moon goddess statue at the top of the lunar sea spire before midnight or the whole place will be destroyed. She goes on to talk about how beautiful of a place it was in its day. She explains how it was an oasis for gems on Earth but is currently abandoned. When Steven realizes that they need to carry the statue there, he finds this a suitable time to debut his newest piece of gear, his Cheeseburger Backpack. Amethyst wants to bring him along under the pretext of education. The other gems agree and decide it would be a good educational trip for him. After packing as many things as he can fit in the backpack, Steven and the gems take the warpad in the living room to the lunar sea spire. They witness the spire falling apart at the seams, with Pearl stating that it wasn't like this 100 years ago. Their first obstacle is getting to the spire. They have to jump a gap that Garnet says is magically protected with a gravitational force pulling down towards the water. Steven goes into his backpack and pulls out the first of his odd items that he brought along with him, sweaters. He ties them together and throws them towards the spire, using them as a rope swing. After he succeeds, Amethyst pulls out her whip and brings her and the rest of the gems over. Shocked, Pearl angrily tells Steven to never do that again, but claims it was a pretty good idea. Pearl is pretty protective of Steven. They head to the top where the statue needs to be placed, and Pearl is distressed at the sight of all the crumbling statues and walls. Pearl tells Steven of the possibility that the place will all be repaired once the moon goddess statue is placed, but they suddenly come face to face with an infestation of crystal shrimp. Steven wonders if he can just squish them, but Pearl stops him, saying that their shards are deadly. Pearl comes up with a complex plan and starts to explain it, but Steven simply throws some bagels from his backpack into the room, making the shrimp clear a path. The gems are so impressed with his ingenuity that when a ravine forms in front of them and fills with water, they immediately look to him for a plan. Steven reaches into his backpack and pulls out the first sensible item he packed, a raft. Unfortunately, as soon as he tosses it into the water, it's carried down a waterfall. Garnet kicks over a column to use as a bridge, but says that Steven had a nice idea despite, it not working. They pass over the bridge that Garnet had made for them and begin to trek up to the top of the spire. Once they're at the top, they see a beautiful view of the sky and realize that it's still before midnight and they still have time to place the statue and save the spire. Garnet asks Steven for the statue from his bag. He begins to rummage through it and looks more and more nervous with every second. Disappointed, he tells the gems that he doesn't have the statue, but he has an alternative. From his Cheeseburger Backpack, he proceeds to pull out a Mr. Queasy, a plush doll he got from his room while packing for the adventure. The gems say it's worth a shot, and Steven puts Mr. Queasy where the moon goddess statue is supposed to go. A beam of light goes from Mr. Queasy directly to the moon, and for a moment, it seems like it's gonna work. The doll begins to levitate, but then explodes. The lunar sea spire begins to crumble and eventually floods. Surviving the fall, the gems one by one pop up from underwater. Steven apologizes that the spire sunk, but Pearl and Amethyst cheer him up, saying that 50% of his ideas worked. The raft that went over the edge of the waterfall from earlier pops up, and they get on it to head back home. Amethyst and Pearl start chanting "Cheeseburger Backpack" over and over, however Garnet mentions that it's going to be a 3-hour paddle to get home. The episode ends with Steven asking the others, anyone want a wet bagel? Which is his next idea to help them get back home. Together breakfast. The episode begins in the morning, where Steven looks for the gems but discovers the house empty. Regardless, he decides to make breakfast and starts by stacking a tower of waffles. He continues, preparing the meal by piling on numerous toppings: syrup, whipped cream, popcorn, completing the breakfast with the most intense placing of a strawberry garnish ever put to film. After several additional attempts to gather the gems, Steven gives up, upset that he made a meal he calls Together Breakfast and he can't share it with the others. Garnet suddenly warps into the room and Steven asks if she would like to have some of his Together Breakfast. She declines because she has to go into the Crystal Temple to burn something. She shows him a scroll with strange patterns and voices emanating from it. Intrigued by it, Steven takes a picture with his phone. Garnet quickly snatches it from him, now saying that she has to burn that too, and goes into the temple. Steven tries to open the temple door with his gem. He's unable to and dejectedly goes back to the table. Suddenly, the front door of the beach house opens. A shape-shifted Amethyst as a policeman called the Dumb Police starts yelling that he's dumb. She then squirts a water gun at the Together Breakfast, and Steven quickly jumps in front to save it, getting drenched in the process. Steven tells Amethyst that he knew of her disguise the entire time. He puts on a new shirt, which Amethyst squirts with her water gun again. Another victim of the Dumb Police. Pearl comes out of the temple using Amethyst's door and is mad at her for taking one of her swords. Amethyst claims that she didn't, but rushes back in after Pearl mentions that she cleaned her room. Steven asks if they would like to have his Together Breakfast with him, but they both had gone back inside. Steven quickly follows Pearl through her door without her noticing. He sees Pearl on top of her waterfall dancing with her sword collection and putting everything back in place. When Steven calls out to her, she gets mad at him for being in the temple, but Steven ignores her and tries to swim over. Pearl warns him to stop, but Steven accidentally swims towards a long waterfall and falls over the edge. Steven lands in Amethyst's room with the breakfast still intact. He brought the breakfast with him into the temple. Amethyst notices him and complains that Pearl always accuses her of taking her things, but in reality they always fall down the waterfall into her room. She then proceeds to mess up her room again to her standards. Steven says that it still looks pretty messy, which pleases her. Then she notices Steven's breakfast and she insists on eating it. Steven starts running, telling her that it's for everyone, not just her, but she still chases him through the temple. Steven eventually jumps onto a red glowing pole. Pearl comes in and starts panicking because he's on the Crystal Heart, a glass heart that's connected to the most dangerous areas of the temple. She tells him to hold still and not look down, but Steven of course does so and panics, falling down into the depths of the temple. He eventually slides to a stop above the burning room. Then he sees Garnet standing by a pool of lava where she breaks his phone and tosses it in. She begins burning the scroll when the other gems arrive, whispering to Steven that they should leave. Instead, excited that they're all finally in the same room, he calls out to Garnet, distracting her. The smoke monster escapes from the scroll and expands into a large dark cloud. The crystal gems attack the cloud, trying to force it back. The monster rushes at Steven and takes refuge in the Together Breakfast. The breakfast mutates, growing larger, and attacks the gems. Utilizing his powers of a breakfast, it breaks Pearl's super spear and traps her with syrup and whipped cream. It then squashes Garnet and Amethyst with a waffle. It rushes at Steven, but he's able to lift and force the Together Breakfast into the lava pool. The others walk over to Steven and he apologizes, saying that all he wanted was to have breakfast with them. Later, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl help Steven make another Together Breakfast, which is bigger so they can all share it. They finish it and get ready to eat it, but then they realize they don't really have the appetite to eat it as a result of the morning's events, so they decide to order pizza. Garnet remarks that it did try to kill us as the iris closes on her. Frybo. Steven is searching for something when Pearl comes in, asking him if he's seen a gem shard that she says is very important. Steven says no and asks her if she's seen his pants. They're also very important. She warns Steven that the shard is dangerous and can possess clothing garments, turning them into violent living entities. Steven's distracted by his missing pants and hears little of her explanation. She tells him to be on the lookout for the gem shard and heads out to search the town. As Pearl leaves, Steven finds his pants walking on their own, exclaiming, "That's unusual!" and chases after his pants throughout the house. Eventually, Steven catches his pants after tackling them, puts them on, and finds one of the gem shards Pearl is looking for inside a pocket. Steven then leaves the temple in search of Pearl to give her the gem shard. While looking for Pearl, Steven is startled by P.D. Fryman wearing a Frybo character mascot costume being attacked by seagulls mistaking him as fries. After chasing away the seagulls, P.D.'s dad, Mr. Fryman, comes out of the shop and tells P.D. that he's doing a mediocre job at being part of the Fryman business. After his dad goes back inside the shop, P.D. tells Steven that he just wants to help his dad without wearing the costume, and Steven gets an idea, to wear the costume himself. However, this idea backfires when the seagulls come back and attack Steven while he's wearing the costume, also mistaking him for fries. Steven eventually takes off the damaged costume. He comes up with the idea to use the gem shard to make Frybo come to life. The plan succeeds. Frybo is repaired and listens to Steven's every command. When Steven tells Frybo to do a little dance, Frybo grows legs made out of fries and dances. Mr. Fryman comes out and tells Frybo, not knowing that PD isn't inside the costume, that he's doing a great job. Once Mr. Fryman returns to the store, PD claims that he's free and tells Frybo that it got the job and to shake on it. Frybo takes this literally and physically shakes PD. After it lets go of him, PD tells Frybo to make people eat fries and plans to go be kids with Steven as they run off to Funland. As Steven and PD ride Jelly Jiggler and Tsunami retrospectively, PD becomes depressed and realizes that riding the seahorse isn't as satisfying as it used to be. Later, the two hear screaming from the fry shop and run to see what's going on. They discover that Frybo took PD's earlier command literally and is now using his fry tentacles to force-feed people fries. Mr. Fryman, somehow believing that it's still PD inside the costume, tries to reason with him and apologizes for being tough on him. Frybo responds by trying to force-feed Mr. Fryman his own fries, then throwing him out the window on top of the boys. Eventually, Pearl arrives and asks Steven if he put the shard inside the costume, to which Steven says yes. Pearl summons her spear and throws it into Frybo's eye, resulting in an eruption of ketchup and mustard. The stream of condiments catches Pearl in the face, blinding her and causing her to drop the other gem shards. While PD rushes to his father, Frybo emerges from the fry shop with Pearl's weapon protruding from its eye. PD stands between Frybo and his father and tries to defend him by swinging a broken wooden plank at Frybo. In the process, he reveals his true feelings about always hating Frybo just as his dad regains consciousness. Frybo then disarms PD, who falls back into his father's arms as Mr. Fryman tries to shield him from the approaching Frybo. Steven's pants are seen leaping onto Frybo and kicking him. Steven has taken off all of his clothes and used each of the shards to bring them to life. Steven commands his clothes to attack Frybo as he tries to remove Frybo's shard, but fails. Steven exclaims that he didn't want to do this, but Frybo leaves him no choice. His underwear then flies off and attacks Frybo along with the rest of his clothing. Together, they're finally able to subdue Frybo long enough for Steven to reach into his cheese-filled mouth and rip out the gem shard, reverting Frybo into an inanimate costume. The scene transfers to the beach, where the Fryman mascot is given a Viking funeral. PD asks if his dad wants to get another costume, and his dad replies that he doesn't need another Frybo because he has PD. Steven, still naked, heroically states that their mission is complete. Pearl chides him to put his clothes back on. And if you thought that the body horror of Frybo was a lot, we are not getting a break because the next episode is Cat Fingers. The episode begins with Steven and Greg cleaning Mayor Dewey's van and play fighting with the water hoses. After they finish cleaning, a cat holding a hose in its mouth starts spraying Steven and Greg. The cat reveals itself to be Amethyst. You know, if you didn't already realize it, because the cat is purple and has a big gem on it. Steven asks Amethyst if he could shapeshift like her as they walk to the Crystal Temple. When they arrive, Amethyst shows off her shapeshifting powers, and Pearl tells Amethyst that just because she can shapeshift doesn't mean she should. Steven asks Pearl if she could shapeshift. She answers that all gems can, and Amethyst interrupts by shapeshifting into Pearl and mocking her. Pearl leaves, and Steven asks Amethyst how to shapeshift. Amethyst explains her methods of shapeshifting, and Steven attempts to turn into a cat. He manages to transform one of his fingers into a meowing cat head. Amethyst then tells Steven to show it to his dad, and Steven runs around showing off his cat finger. Steven meets Greg at his car wash, it's a wash, and shows him his morphed finger, and Greg, frightened, sprays the cat with water from a bottle. Steven walks to the big donut and shows Sadie and Lars. Sadie is amused and pets the cat, making it purr. When Lars tries to pet it, however, it bites him. Sadie says that it was probably playing, and Steven realizes it doesn't have any friends, so he transforms 4 more fingers into cats so the original finger won't be lonely. Later, Steven demands fry bits from Petey, which he then feeds to the cat fingers at the fry shop. Petey's older brother, Ronaldo, notices and takes a picture of the cats for his blog, Keep Beach City Weird. In the process, Steven turns the fingers on his other hand into cats. He tries to pick up the phone and look at the picture, but the cat fingers screech at him for having their faces smashed into the phone. Steven then returns to the Crystal Temple and asks Amethyst for help returning his fingers to normal, as the gems are leaving to fight a living island. Pearl insists that they help Steven, but Garnet says that they can't because the mission is urgent. Pearl blames Amethyst for this, and Amethyst replies, "That's fair." Pearl tells Steven to stay calm as they leave. Back at the temple, Steven tries to revert his fingers to normal. Unfortunately, his efforts exacerbate his condition, and Steven begins to sprout writhing, meowing cat heads all over his body at a cancerous rate, and he runs to the only person who might be able to help, Greg. By the time Steven reaches Greg, the cats have completely overtaken Steven's body. Greg, surprised by his appearance, sprays Steven with the hose, which allows Steven's face to emerge as he begs for his father to help. Greg reaches towards his son to get him out of there, but one of the cat fingers bites him. Steven begins to contemplate the full extent of his condition, then suddenly realizes that the only thing that can stop the cats is water. He tells Greg to spray him with the hose, but it doesn't produce enough water to remove the cats. Steven begs Greg to use the car wash, but Greg insists that the super wash is too dangerous. Greg finally relents and heads into the car wash as the cats almost completely consume Steven's body. Steven struggles to crawl into the car wash and is blasted by numerous jets of soap and water. The wash successfully clears the cats from Steven's body. Before they can celebrate, they find that one cat finger is remaining, but Greg immediately sprays it with a hose. The crystal gems return the next day, and Pearl rushes to ask if Steven is okay. She then begins to lecture Steven about him listening to her instead of Amethyst, to which Amethyst agrees. Garnet interjects that the alternative lesson they have all learned was to place more faith in Steven. The episode concludes with Steven dropping several cheesy cat puns, much to the annoyance of the other crystal gems. Bubble Buddies. The episode begins with Steven walking out of the house with his bike. The view then pans to the gems discussing whether the seismic disturbances are earthquakes until they see Steven. The gems are confused as to why he's riding a bike on the beach, but he walks off. He stops in front of a girl who's reading a book nearby. Steven then tries to impress the girl with his bike, but when he stumbles, he panics and retreats into the house to find the gems we're watching. Amethyst realizes that Steven likes the girl, and Pearl wants to set up a play date, but Garnet stops them by telling Steven to just talk to her. He agrees, but only if they don't watch the next time, claiming that it will mess up his funky flow. Steven grabs a glowing bracelet from the freezer and runs out. As Steven approaches the girl practicing his greeting, a piece of the cliff crumbles and falls towards her. When Steven jumps to rescue her, his gem activates and encases them both in a protective bubble that saves them at the last second. Steven introduces himself to the girl. She introduces herself in turn as Connie. She thanks Steven and asks him if he can disable the bubble. He then realizes that he can't disable the bubble. He says that the gems can help, but Steven and Connie are unable to roll up the hill. They go to the big donut to ask for help from Sadie and Lars. Sadie tries to break the bubble with a hammer, while Lars makes fun of Steven for being trapped with Connie. Sadie tells Lars to quit being a jerk, and they start arguing. Sadie then goes inside and attempts to smash the bubble with a chair, but that fails like the other attempts. Connie and Steven later go to the pier and ask Onion to help them. Steven asks Onion to use a harpoon gun to pop the bubble, but he can't hear him through the bubble or understand Steven's drawing. Connie writes backward and Onion understands. Unfortunately, the harpoon bounces off the bubble and sinks a nearby trawler. Steven and Connie then go to Funland because Steven wants to use a roller coaster to pop the bubble. Connie objects, but a tremor rolls them onto the coaster's tracks. Instead of popping the bubble, the coaster launches the two into the ocean. As they try to roll back to shore, a giant worm, which is actually a corrupted orange spodumene, which was causing the tremors earlier. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's fair, we're gonna get to that. Anyway, it appears and it frightens Connie. Steven tells her that it only wants to eat some nearby glowing seaweed. The spodumene then creates a trench that the kids fall into. Steven discovers that he accidentally put his foot in Connie's face. He tries to apologize to her, but she finally explodes, frustrated that Steven doesn't know what he's doing and that she might die without ever making a friend. Connie cries and Steven shows her the glow bracelet, telling her that they can be friends. He reveals that he saw her during a parade the year before but couldn't find her to give back the bracelet, so he kept it in case he met her again. Connie reveals that she saw him last year too. As the two reconcile, the bubble finally bursts and they make it to shore, but spodumene follows them. Steven realizes that the monster is chasing them because of Connie's glow bracelet, so he takes it and uses it to lure the spodumene to a nearby pier where he uses the pillars to trap and defeat her. The gems show up and Garnet disposes of spodumene's gemstone. When Pearl and Amethyst try to introduce themselves, Garnet stops them by telling them not to mess with Steven's funky flow. Connie asks what funky flow is, and Steven gets embarrassed. Serious Steven. The episode begins with Steven waking up in Funland. He sees that all of the teacups on the ride have been thrown out of position with everyone else riding in them. The episode then surges to 2 weeks after the incident, with Steven and the other gems in the teleporter, Garnet mentioning that this is his first serious mission. Steven brings his ukulele, but it floats away, causing him to go after it. The gems arrive in the gem battlefield, and Steven falls out of the warp stream into a patch of strawberries. While covered in strawberry jelly, Steven is suddenly attacked by a small swarm of butterflies, and Garnet says, "They're just butterflies, Steven." Steven thought they looked bigger when on his eyeballs. As Amethyst laughs at Steven's words, Pearl has second thoughts about having Steven with them, but Garnet shushes her and says to just keep an eye on him. While walking through the strawberry field, Pearl mentions how it used to be a battlefield for the gems, represented by all the swords on the ground. Eventually, the gems find a large upside-down pyramid temple. Inside, there are murals depicting the traps that lie within the maze, as well as a picture of Rose Quartz battling another gem. Steven finds a strange, smaller pyramid and touches it, causing it to flip over. Everyone inside then begins to gravitate towards a hole in the ceiling. Eventually, they fall into a large room with multiple doors. Pearl decides the group should split up and suggests that they should stay with Steven. Amethyst picks Steven up, suggesting to go with him, but Pearl takes Steven back, saying that Amethyst and Steven are just a disaster waiting to happen. Garnet chooses to take Steven with her, while Pearl goes with Amethyst. Garnet and Steven travel through 3 trap rooms, with Garnet doing most of the work and Steven usually needing to be saved or carried. In the 3rd room, which is incredibly dangerous with axes, fire, spikes, and lava, after feeling queasy, Steven has a flashback to the Funland trip 2 weeks ago, where he and the Crystal Gems went on the teacup ride. Pearl was riding with Amethyst, misunderstanding the point of the ride. Meanwhile, Steven was riding with Garnet, but Steven eventually gets sick and falls out of the ride, landing on Mr. Smiley and breaking the lever. The ride speeds out of control, sending all the teacups flying with the riders inside. Mr. Smiley then angrily banned Steven from all the rides forever after Steven woke up. Back in the present, Steven wakes to realize Garnet carried him through the 3rd room because he fell asleep. After exiting, they find themselves in the room where they started. Pearl finds them and tells Garnet that they arrived back at where they started after 3 rooms no matter which path they take. Amethyst is seen running through the doorways trying to find an exit, but gets progressively more injured by the traps and hazards. As Pearl goes to free her, Steven asks Garnet what they should do. She says they'll have to keep going in as long as it takes for them to find the exit. Horrified, Steven has a small breakdown as he believes it's his fault he's in this situation, just like with the teacups. Pearl tells him to not think that way, but Steven realizes that the temple must have been like the teacup ride. Each room they entered rotated to connect them to another room, sending them into another door leading into the main chamber. Garnet breaks through the floor and they all fall into a large machine that causes the temple's rooms to rotate. Garnet throws Steven at his request to the centerpiece as he removes the gem controlling it, causing the temple to explode. The gems emerge from the rubble and compliment Steven on his ingenuity. The episode ends with Steven strumming on his ukulele, singing the serious song, only to be interrupted as he's attacked by a swarm of butterflies once again, attracted to the berry jam newly coating his body once again. Tiger Millionaire. The episode begins with the gems returning to the temple. Pearl is seen yelling at Amethyst for being too childish on their mission. Steven is covered in gunk from a blood polyp, which he considers fun at first, but it eventually hardens and prevents him from moving. He asks for help, but the others are busy arguing and ignore him for the rest of the evening. Later, Steven remains covered in the gunk overnight, and he falls asleep standing in the kitchen. He's woken up when Amethyst leaves the house. He falls over with surprise, breaking the blood polyp shell and setting himself free. Steven follows Amethyst from the house to a wrestling match. He looks through the window and sees Amethyst enter the ring, shapeshifting into her wrestling persona, the Purple Puma. Ronaldo meets Amethyst in the ring dressed as the Loch Ness Blogster and attempts to fight her, but she takes him down without much effort. After the fight ends, Amethyst leaves the building and returns to her previous form. Steven jumps on Amethyst, and Amethyst reflexively flips him forward onto the ground. She's shocked to see Steven there, and Steven asks if she's secretly a wrestler, which, obviously she is. Amethyst confirms his suspicion, and this excites Steven. She tells him that she participates in matches because in the ring she can do whatever she wants and everybody loves it. Steven asks if he can join in, and she says that he can become her tag team partner if he agrees not to tell Pearl and Garnet. Later that night, Steven dresses up as a tiger and calls himself Tiger Millionaire. He and Amethyst return to the event and fight a new contender. At first, Steven is of little help to Amethyst in the matches, but after he distracts an opponent with a fake bribery and uses his suitcase to knock him out, Steven becomes a strong asset to her and a popular heel. Heel is wrestling talk for bad guy. After dozens of victories, Steven drops several drinks on the floor meant for the crowd. Lars, without knowing Tiger Millionaire's true identity, asks him to sign his drink. Steven knocks his drink to the floor, hurting Lars's feelings. Immediately afterwards, Steven begins to regret his decision as the crowd looks on disappointed. Garnet and Pearl discover Amethyst and Steven's nighttime occupation when they find the flyer Steven created to advertise their final match. After Amethyst scolds them for ruining her wrestling, Garnet demands her and Steven return to the temple. Amethyst refuses, and she begins fighting Garnet. Steven interrupts and tells the crowd Purple Puma's backstory, helping Garnet and Pearl understand Amethyst's reasons for wrestling. The audience begins chanting for a fight between the two groups. Garnet replies no, saying she and Pearl are the notorious order of wrestling haters. The four pretend to fight in order to please the crowd. Garnet and Pearl let Tiger and Puma win, ending the match. Garnet, who has been dubbed as Captain Square, and Amethyst apologize to each other. Steven and Amethyst claim the tag team medals while Sadie states that she's confused by what just happened and turns to Lars, who softly states, "I love you, Tiger Millionaire," while dramatically shedding a tear. Steven's Lion. The episode opens with the Gems and Steven trekking through the desert, littered with large sandstone columns that erect and dissipate at random. Garnet explains that the power in the structure has turned aimless, and thus was raising standalone structures at random. Suddenly, a loud roar interrupts their conversation, and the Gems run off to investigate, leaving an exhausted Steven behind. Shortly thereafter, a mystical pink lion with glowing eyes approaches Steven. Though initially startled, Steven quickly realizes the lion means no harm and begins to pet and converse with it. Not too long after, however, a large explosion captures their attention. The Gems approach after defeating the monster which held the gem powering the structure known as the Desert Glass, a red velvet pillow encrusted with a large green gem, which Amethyst claims is hers since she delivered the killing blow. Pearl notes that she should take care of it as dropping it on sand would rebuild everything. Upon seeing Steven with the lion, they quickly take up arms, only for Steven to reassure them that the lion means no harm. Steven says his goodbyes as they exit the desert and return to the Crystal Temple. Back at the temple, Amethyst and Steven nap under a pillow fort topped with the desert glass. Then he hears something scratching at the door. Much to his surprise, the pink lion appears at his doorstep. Steven then attempts to play games with the lion, but to no avail, as the lion appears largely apathetic to all of his games. Slightly disheartened, Steven believes he knows of something that the lion has gotta like. He then brings him to Fish Stew Pizza, which Steven enters hoping to brag about his lion. Inside, Onion and Ronaldo Fryman are eating, while Kofi and Kiki work the counter. Steven lets them know of his lion, which excites Ronaldo, while Kiki is very much reserved. Upon exiting the pizzeria, they find no such lion, though Ronaldo initially believed it to be invisible, which elicits a bad lion pun from Kiki and an unsettling death stare from Onion. Steven finds the lion back at his home, getting there just as he tears the door down, and it becomes apparent that he's after the desert glass. The revelation angers and disheartens Steven, who becomes frustrated with the lion and subsequently throws the pillow off the balcony and onto the beach. The ground suddenly begins to quake and massive sandstone columns begin to grow around the gem. The Gems run outside and Pearl explains that the desert glass is attempting to rebuild its castle. Meanwhile, the pillow engenders a massive sandstorm and wall which not even Garnet is able to penetrate. Steven, being caught inside, realizes that he must take it from atop the central tower. Upon almost reaching the top, the sand structure morphs and forces Steven to fall from a great height, only to be caught by the lion. Steven realizes the lion only wanted to protect him from the pillow, and the lion uses a magical roar to destroy the sand structures all around them. They then burst through the top of the tower and retrieve the gem, and all of the sand structures dissipate shortly thereafter. Pearl reprimands Amethyst for not bubbling the desert glass in the first place, and Amethyst states that in her defense, she forgot. Steven indirectly asks the gems if he can keep the lion, which they, specifically Garnet, indirectly agree to. Steven names the lion, Lion. Arcade Mania. The episode begins with the crystal gems walking along an underground cave cliff ledge in search of blue chalcedony. The mission requires stealth, but Steven's coat is making a loud swishing sound, much to Pearl's annoyance. She lectures Steven about wearing the noisy coat during a stealth mission. Steven tries to explain that he's wearing the coat to avoid catching a cold, but Pearl points out that he's still wearing sandals. Steven tries to avoid making any further noise, but Amethyst mimics the sound of the coat swishing, leading Pearl to berate him again. Before Steven has a chance to explain, he falls off the edge of the cliff, although Garnet is there to catch him at the bottom. As she puts him down, blue chalcedony suddenly attacks them. Garnet is able to defeat the creature and collect its core, but she allows the drill parasites to escape. To celebrate their victory, Steven takes them to the Funland arcade, much to the other gems' dismay. As Pearl struggles to come up with excuses not to go, Amethyst points out that they don't have any money. In response, Steven opens his coat to reveal pockets full of quarters. He then pairs each gem to an arcade game. He attempts to get Pearl to play the racing game, Road Killer, but is unsuccessful because she doesn't understand the objective and is a cautious driver. He then successfully coaxes Amethyst into playing skee-ball, although she starts to cheat upon learning that the tickets earned from the game are exchangeable for prizes. You know, as we all do. Steven has the most difficulty with Garnet, who breaks two fighting games and misunderstanding their concepts. However, she becomes entranced after Steven introduces her to the rhythm game Meat Beat Mania, to the point that she doesn't hear Steven when he collects the other gems to leave after Mr. Smiley discovers the broken games. The following morning, Steven is out on the beach looking for quarters with his metal detector when the drill parasites ambush him. He cries for help, causing Pearl and Amethyst to step in and aid him. Regardless of their individual strengths in battle, they're ineffective without Garnet's guidance and are forced to retreat. While running across the pier, Steven realizes their need for Garnet and rushes back to the arcade, leaving Amethyst and Pearl to fend off the parasites on their own. Inside the arcade, Steven finds that Garnet is still playing the rhythm game with Onion watching, reaching levels he's seen no one else reach before. He tries to get her attention and alert her to the danger outside, but she doesn't seem to be listening. He climbs on top of her and tries to snap her out of her trance. In his haste, he removes Garnet's shades, revealing not only her third eye, but its hyper-focus on keeping up with the game's rhythm. Steven tries to beat Garnet at the game in hopes that she'll snap out of it, but he ends up losing each time. After running out of quarters, he then attempts to unplug the game, but to his dismay, Garnet uses her powers, specifically her electrokinesis, to allow her to continue to play the game. In his frustration, Steven rips the game's control panel out of its stand and smashes the game's screen with it, ultimately releasing the game's hold over Garnet. Garnet thanks Steven and joins Amethyst and Pearl, turning the tide of the previously futile battle. As Steven attempts to leave the arcade, he's caught by an infuriated Mr. Smiley, who believes Steven was the cause of the destroyed games. Steven is then forced to work off the cost of the damaged games while the other gems fight the drill parasites as he's responsible for the mess. Steven steals glances at the gems and briefly cheers them on before Mr. Smiley silently tells him to resume working. Steven eventually finds a quarter on the floor, and the episode ends with a Meat Beat Mania narrator saying, "Now you're cookin'!" They called the game Meat Beat Mania. Are we just gonna let that one hang? We're not gonna point... Okay. Giant woman. The episode begins with Pearl and Amethyst playing checkers. Steven uses water balloons in an attempt to motivate the two, and Pearl wins easily. Amethyst and Pearl then start an argument over why they don't form Opal anymore. An excited Steven asks who Opal is and bombards them with questions, so Pearl manipulates sand to form an image of Opal to explain what happens when the two, Amethyst and Pearl, perform a dance-like ritual to combine into a single, more formidable crystal gem named Opal. Amethyst interrupts, saying that she doesn't dance in the manner Pearl demonstrated, and continues to describe what Opal is like, which makes Steven want Pearl and Amethyst to fuse together. However, he's interrupted at the temple as he notices that Garnet has returned from her mission. Garnet tells Amethyst, Pearl, and Steven to go to the Sky Spire and retrieve the Heaven Beetle, while she goes to retrieve the Earth Beetle, telling Steven to keep harmony between Pearl and Amethyst. At the Sky Spire, Steven keeps pestering Pearl and Amethyst with trivial questions about how the fusion works as he sings about his desire to see them combined into a giant woman. To which Pearl explains that they only fuse together when there's an emergency. During the trip, Steven intentionally dramatizes various circumstances to get Amethyst and Pearl to fuse. He also finds a mountain goat and names him Steven Jr. Eventually, the trio, and Steven Jr., come across an area of small platform-like islands. Amethyst throws Steven onto one of the platforms and they start playing on them. Suddenly, one of the islands tips over and Steven falls. Pearl and Amethyst are quickly forced to work together to save Steven. They successfully save him, but when they reach the top of the spire, the heaven beetle is discovered to be missing from its home. Pearl and Amethyst start to argue again when suddenly the trio is attacked by a giant bird. The bird eats Steven Jr., much to Steven's terror. Pearl then attempts to throw her spear at the bird, but it too is eaten. The trio then flees into the nearby dome, where Steven encourages Pearl and Amethyst to fuse into Opal. Pearl and Amethyst then attempt to fuse together, with Pearl dancing gracefully and Amethyst indeed doing a very different dance. Because of their lack of synchronization, the fusion fails. Suddenly, the giant bird's beak breaks in through the roof and it eats Steven. When inside the bird, Steven finds Steven Jr. chewing on the heaven beetle. Steven manages to get the heaven beetle out of Steven Jr.'s mouth and puts the artifact in his pocket. Suddenly, several arms punch into the bird's stomach and drag Steven out, and he finds that his savior is a tall blue-skinned woman with 4 arms, Opal, the fusion of Amethyst and Pearl. She then fuses Amethyst and Pearl's weapons together into a bow and uses it to defeat all of the smaller birds. Steven is astonished and didn't realize Opal retained Pearl and Amethyst's memories until she said the lyrics, "All you wanna do is see me turn into," a part of the song Steven had been singing earlier. I'm not gonna sing the whole thing. Recognizing that this was the giant woman he was singing about. Opal and Steven then warp back into the temple. When Garnet asks about the heaven beetle, Opal realizes with horror that she doesn't have it, and the anxiety causes the two gems to separate yet again. They then start bickering about how they forgot the heaven beetle before Steven stops the argument by taking the heaven beetle out of his pocket and giving it to Garnet. She places the beetle into a bug cage with the earth beetle, and then she bubbles it. As the episode closes, Garnet tells Steven that he'll be great at fusing one day. The star-shaped iris closes in on Steven, but zooms out when Steven has an excited outburst about the implication that he can fuse with others as well. So many birthdays. The episode begins with the crystal gems searching through Amethyst's room for a stench that's contaminating the temple. Steven finds the source, a tuna burrito Amethyst saved from Aqua Mexican, a restaurant that closed 5 years ago. Amethyst eagerly takes a bite, disgusting Steven and Pearl. Steven then notices a photo of the gems in Rose Quartz in Pioneer clothes. Pearl states that the gems in the photo were from many, many years ago. Pearl tells Steven that they're immortal and don't age, although they can still get injured and die, which upsets Steven. Nevertheless, Steven is amazed that the gems age and wonders how they can find a birthday cake large enough for all those candles. Garnet then says that they don't celebrate birthdays. Steven is flabbergasted by this and decides to make up all the birthdays that they missed. Amethyst vomits from food poisoning as the screen cuts to black. That's the end of the episode. No, I'm just kidding. Steven first throws a birthday party for Amethyst, who spirals into violence as she doesn't completely understand how to celebrate a birthday. Steven then throws a party for Pearl, who's unenthusiastic about the idea. Throughout the party, Steven acts like a clown and tells jokes, which Pearl doesn't find funny at all. Lastly, Steven throws a party for Garnet, featuring kazoo racers. Before doing anything, Garnet and Pearl tell Steven that they're just too big for parties. This makes Steven deeply think about the childish things he does. Distraught, Steven wanders into town, contemplating the nature of birthdays and aging. His forlorn attitude inadvertently activates his gemstone, resulting in him aging into a teenager, making him hit puberty instantaneously. He continues to age as he begins to feel older and heads toward the big donut and asks the two for the usual. Lars becomes confused as he doesn't recognize the older Steven. Steven looks in the glass case of donuts and spots his reflection. In shock of his older form, he becomes worried that he has to start doing older things now, such as eating sugarless cereal, aging him even more. He then thinks that if he has a reverse birthday, he'll turn back to normal. He asks Lars and Sadie if they could help him into his birthday suit, much to Sadie's shock and Lars' slight amusement. Taking this the wrong way, Sadie chases Steven out with a chair. Steven starts running back home, aging rapidly as he runs. He trips and falls, and Lion comes and carries him in his mouth to the gems. While the gems clean up the supplies from Steven's birthday parties to them, Pearl admits that the parties were fun, with Garnet still wearing Steven's birthday suit, saying it makes her important. Before Lion arrives with Steven. Horrified, the gems try to reverse his age by attempting to entertain him with birthday party activities, but Steven, depressed by the thought of outgrowing these, ages even more. Pearl, who can't bear to look at Steven aging rapidly, can't bring herself to help them. When Amethyst demands that she do so, she's placed in front of Steven, wearing his clown costume from earlier. She tries to perform the pie joke like Steven, but upset by his worsening condition, starts crying, frustrating Amethyst, who accuses her of killing him faster. Pearl can't keep herself together and runs over to Amethyst and hugs her, sobbing hysterically. Suddenly, both of them freeze when they see Garnet walking over to Steven, awaiting her response to the worsening situation. However, Garnet picks up Steven and violently shakes him back and forth. Pearl and Amethyst rush over to stop Garnet, shocked and appalled by her desperate actions. The three of them all begin to argue over what to do, and a fading Steven watches them from the ground. Garnet begins to shed tears when suddenly Steven stands up straight, telling the gems to control themselves, turning into a young adult as he speaks. The gems realize that Steven's age is fluctuating due to his gem reacting to his state of mind. They manage to get him to feel like himself again, assuring him that he doesn't need to feel like he's being childish if he's just being himself. He returns to his normal age, but notices that he still has adult legs. He jokingly bounces around and laughs as the star iris closes in. Lars and the Cool Kids. Steven and the Crystal Gems are on a mission to isolate a dangerous, fast-growing, clinging moss from the humans in Beach City. The moss is capable of overwhelming and devouring any living thing that crosses its path. It originated from a nearby hill where Rose had planted it hundreds of years before, but has since moved to a valley lagoon. According to Pearl, despite the dangerous nature of the moss, Rose planted it because she saw beauty in everything, no matter how gross. To protect the oblivious human population, the gems section off the area with police tape while they decide how to transport it away. Steven breaks for lunch at Fish Stew Pizza, and there he sees Lars standing outside the diner. Lars seems uncomfortable and is less tolerant of Steven's enthusiastic greetings. More than usual, I mean. When Steven asks what he's doing, he replies, "Just playing it cool." Steven sees 3 teenagers eating inside the diner. Lars tells him their names are Buck, Jenny, and Sour Cream, the Cool Kids. It becomes evident that Lars is indiscreetly observing the Cool Kids, hoping that they'll notice him and invite him to hang out with them. The Cool Kids leave the diner, and Steven offers to alert them to Lars's presence. He's mortified and tries to prevent Steven from doing so, insisting that he'll ruin his chances of friendship and inclusion in the group. However, Steven's bubbly personality appeals to the Cool Kids, and they invite him and Lars for a drive in Jenny's pizza car through Beach City. In the car, Steven continues to engage the Cool Kids by being sincere. Lars struggles to gain their approval through pretense, flattery, and being over-obliging. Steven's success in connecting with the group frustrates him. The group elects to explore Dead Man's Mouth, the lagoon's name either inspired by the mysterious death of a man there or because of the landform's resemblance to a mouth. Upon their arrival, Steven recognizes the lagoon home to the carnivorous moss he and the gems dealt with that morning. The Cool Kids disregard the police tape, and despite Steven's desperate attempts to dissuade them, they dive into the lagoon. Steven manages to stop Lars from entering the water, and they watch as the moss envelops the panicking teenagers as they stagger ashore. It cocoons their bodies, rendering them immobile and unable to breathe. Steven tells Lars the origins of the moss, and the older boy becomes angry, saying that it's Rose's fault his chances are ruined with the Cool Kids. Steven takes offense and shouts, "What do you know about my mom? I didn't even get to know my mom!" Unable to remove the moss by hand due to the moss growing and duplicating over and over again, Steven gets an idea. He and Lars move the motionless bodies of the Cool Kids into the pizza car, and they drive haphazardly up the hill up to the original birthplace of the moss. Overcome and cocooned by the moss spreading from Sour Cream, Jenny, and Buck, Steven and Lars finally collapse, lugging the Cool Kids to the summit of the hill. The sun emerges from behind the clouds, and the moss transforms into hundreds of blooming flowers, freeing Steven, Lars, and the Cool Kids. Sour Cream comments, "I think I just died." They admire the panoramic view of Beach City and the ocean. When Jenny asks how they arrived there, Steven claims that Lars brought them there. As a symbol of gratitude, Lars accepts Steven's offer of a high five. Onion trade. Steven finds Amethyst outside and tells her that he lost his guy's toy. After hearing this, Pearl tells him that he can't find his things due to his messy room. She then opens his window, allowing a seagull to fly out. Amethyst stands up for Steven, stating that her room is just as messy and she's still able to find everything she's looking for. This remark causes an argument between Amethyst and Pearl as usual, and Steven quietly leaves. He walks solemnly to the car wash, and when he gets there, his father sprays him with the hose, ready to play with him. However, Steven, who's not in the mood to play right then, tells Greg that he lost his toy that Greg got him last summer. Greg, who's unable to remember this toy, decides to give Steven a bag of quarters so he can win himself a new Ranger Guy from Funland Arcade. After numerous attempts to obtain Ranger Guy, Steven has only won several Dave Guys. He then realizes that Onion has the guy he's looking for. He follows him with the hopes of trading all the toys he has for the Ranger Guy. After Onion refuses to trade, Steven goes back to the temple and talks with Amethyst, who gives him Pearl's replicator wand. Steven once again attempts to trade for Ranger Guy by replicating Dave Guy. Eventually, Onion comes to Steven and asks him for the wand instead. Ultimately, Steven gives in, handing Onion the wand for Ranger Guy. The wand is to Onion's liking, and he accepts the trade. As time passes, Onion begins to replicate countless numbers of Guy toy balls. When the gems question the situation, Steven reveals how he traded the wand for Ranger Guy, and Pearl asks why didn't he just use it to replicate Ranger Guy? The gems, bombarded by Onion's attacks, fail to coerce Onion into handing over the replicator wand. While the gems are distracting him, Steven is able to jump on Onion and make him drop the wand. He realizes that Onion had stolen his ranger guy, but lets him keep it because he realizes all Onion does is sit around and wait for his dad. Garnet destroys the replicator wand, which results in the disintegration of every replicated item. Amethyst then asks if all the stuff she copied disappeared as well, to which Pearl confirms, leaving Amethyst disappointed. As the gems walk home, Greg approaches his son and compliments him on his actions. Greg then asks him why he went through all that trouble for a toy. Steven responds that he wanted it for the memories, but states that he now has new memories. Horrible, horrible memories. Steven the Sword Fighter. Steven and the Gems watch a Japanese movie called Lonely Blade 4, which Pearl criticizes, claiming that it's nothing like real sword fighting. She then offers to show a demonstration of proper sword fighting technique to Steven, which he excitedly accepts. Pearl then takes the Gems to a cloud temple where Amethyst is sitting on a cloud floating in the air. Pearl says that she's in need of a sparring partner, and Steven raises his hand, but Garnet quickly shoves it down. Pearl then says that she already has the perfect partner and projects a hologram of herself who's trained to sword fight. They then have a battle, Steven and Garnet cheering on Pearl, Amethyst on the other hand cheering for Hollow Pearl. Pearl finally wins, and Steven asks Pearl to teach him the art of sword fighting. She then shows him the basics, leaving him bored, so he requests for Pearl to do the boomerang blade from the movie, apparently not understanding Pearl's entire problem with the movie in that it was unrealistic. Pearl then begins to lecture him on how you have to wait for the perfect time in sword fighting, and then gets distracted from her fight. Hollow Pearl then stabs Pearl in the back with her sword, impaling her. All the gems go into shock as Pearl disappears, leaving only her gem behind. Steven begins to cry and blames himself for what happened to Pearl, because as far as he knows, she's dead. She's just dead. Pearl died, Pearl is dead. Garnet then explains that Pearl, isn't dead and that this has happened in the past, and she'll reappear as soon as she's gathered enough energy to heal from her wound. Steven asks how long that'll be. 2 weeks pass and Pearl still hasn't regenerated. Steven gets depressed and tries to fill Pearl's void by hanging out with Pearl's holographic clone, but the clone is only interested in combat practice. Because it's not, like, a sentient being. The other gems tell Steven to stop hanging around with Hollow Pearl as it's getting kinda creepy. Meanwhile, Amethyst eats part of a cloud, inflates like a balloon, and goes flying into the sky when Garnet accidentally lets go of her leg. Normal Amethyst stuff. Steven tries to get a reaction out of Hollow Pearl by taking her to Pearl's favorite tree, but when he tells her to not hold back, she takes this as acceptance of her challenge for battle and chops down the tree. Steven, annoyed by how much Hollow Pearl wants to fight him, runs away back to the house. Later, Steven is planning to watch Lonely Blade 5, but Hollow Pearl tries to get Steven to fight her again and destroys the TV in the process. Steven finally snaps at Hollow Pearl, yelling at how horrible she is and how all she wants to do is fight him, unlike the real Pearl, pushing the holographic version in the process. This results in Hollow Pearl attacking Steven in basic attack mode, which Steven throws his toys at, one of them hitting her, only to activate her advanced mode. She then attacks Steven, actually trying to kill him, while Steven tries to use items he finds around the house, like a walrus and a boomerang. Not a real walrus, that'd be weird. Actually, would that be weird? I don't know if that would be weird. Although nothing works, eventually he destroys her by throwing a mop like the boomerang blade and impaling her. Finally, Pearl finishes regenerating and sees the mess that Steven has made of the house and the inflated Amethyst and says that she can't leave them alone for a second. Steven ties his shirt on like a headband and begins banging a pot with a spoon, marching around the room repeatedly chanting, "Pearl's back!" as the episode ends. There's a reason I said that they were Steven's surrogate moms. Lion 2, the movie. The episode begins with Connie showing Steven the trailer for a new movie called Dogcopter 3, starring Dogcopter, a dog cop robot that saves a city by shooting missiles from its butt. Connie tells Steven why it's her favorite film franchise, and she hopes it stays loyal to the book. The gems warp into the house, posing in an attempt to impress Connie. Pearl, with her new outfit, feigns surprise at seeing her. Steven asks Connie to show them the trailer. Amethyst sees Dogcopter and decides to shapeshift into it, astounding Connie. Steven assures her that the movie will be more impressive than any magic. Connie, unsure of this, asks how they'll get to the movies as the theater's pretty far away. Outside the house, Steven introduces Connie to their mode of transportation, Lion. Connie is shocked. She expresses disappointment with her life compared to Steven's fantastic gem adventures and says the most exciting thing in her life is her tennis lessons. She jokingly demonstrates 3 tennis shots, including overhead death strike, which she admits is a made-up move, but it impresses Steven anyway. They then jump onto Lion's back to go to the theater, but Lion refuses to move for a few moments. When Steven says he isn't trained very well, Lion begins running towards the beach. He then leaps above the ocean, terrifying Connie and Steven. Fortunately, he lands on the water gracefully, and they discover that Lion can walk on water. He runs across the ocean, taking Steven and Connie on a magical ride. Lion creates a portal by roaring and runs through it, and the three arrive inside an empty training temple. They walk onto a section of the floor and it starts to glow. A podium emerges from the floor. Steven places his hand on it and it gets stuck. Connie says that they might have to chop his hand off. Steven screams and a collection of swords come out of the ground. Connie finds out that poking, tickling, and squeezing parts of Steven's body reveals additional varieties of weapons and armor, laser light cannons, spiky chain balls, the heretic's anguish, and a giant penny. Steven then unwittingly activates a floating robot that shoots various projectiles at Steven, Connie, and Lion. Lion helps them escape the temple and takes them to the Beach City Theater, but the robot follows them through the portal. After being slightly burned by the robot, Steven offers Connie a can of soda to ease her pain. She says to just forget about the movie, as Steven probably has more important things to do than watch a movie. Steven says that Dogcopter 3 is very important to him and asks why Connie would hang out with him because he messes everything up. Connie asks why he would ever hang out with her because she's so much less interesting. Suddenly, the robot comes back, even more aggressive than before. Lion summons a sword from his head to help him defend against the robot, and Connie helps Steven to destroy the robot using her tennis serves to reflect his shots. Their teamwork pays off and the robot is destroyed. After dealing with the largely unfazed ticket clerk, they finally get to see Dogcopter 3. Connie's fine with the creative liberties the movie takes from the book. The episode ends in a parody of the lion from the MGM logo, with Lion as the star. Beach Party. The episode begins with the gems fighting a pufferfish on the beach. The corrupted gem easily deflects their attacks with powerful gusts of air as Pearl's spear is flung back at them. Garnet attempts an aerial assault, but the corrupted gem quickly blows her far into the air. Frustrated at her inability to do damage, Amethyst rushes towards the creature, shapeshifts into a giant baseball bat, and knocks her far out to sea. Pearl chastises her for only delaying the inevitable fight, but they leave to find Garnet. Upon further inspection, they find Garnet planted firmly in Fish Stew Pizza's sign, completely unfazed by the fall. Kofi and Kiki are already outside, examining the damage, while Kofi attempts to elicit some response from a stoic and unresponsive Garnet. Garnet completely ignores him and only responds when Steven and the others get there. Amethyst is amused at the destruction, and Pearl explains what happened to the pufferfish. Garnet suggests that they regroup back at the temple and jump off, seemingly unaware of Kofi's protest at the destruction of his shop's sign. At their departure, an irate Kofi questions why a nice boy like Steven would hang around with the gems, who always mess everything up. The ruckus causes Jenny and Nanafwa to appear at the door. Nanafwa lightheartedly jokes about the noise with a fish, but stops at the sight of the destruction. Kofi continues to insult the gems while Steven tries to defend them, but his words fall on deaf ears. Nanafwa, sensing escalation, excuses herself and the girls inside while Kofi carries on, culminating in him banning the gems from his store forever. Steven protests, but fails as Kofi follows the rest of his family inside and closes the door behind them. Back at the temple, the gems debate on what to do about the pufferfish. Amethyst suggests letting her roam free, but Garnet quickly vetoes the idea. Steven returns with bad news about the banishment, which elicits little to no response from the gems. Steven starts to argue about why they should care, but Pearl continues that taking care of the pufferfish is more important. Steven, however, takes exception to this attitude and maintains that people should know how funny, smart, and mysterious they are, and that they should patch things up with the pizzas. Garnet is amused at being called mysterious. In order to prove his point, Steven decides to throw a small party in front of the temple on the beach. Later on, Steven sets up the barbecue for the party and exclaims his excitement over it. The gems appear behind him and he greets them, handing them a fashion magazine. Steven asks them to change into something more casual for the beach. The whole pizza family rounds the corner approaching the temple, which Jenny claims she has never seen before. Steven hurries to greet them. Kofi grudgingly explains that the shop is closed today because it's broken. This makes everyone nervous until Nanafwa brings up the food, which Steven leads them to. Steven begins to introduce the gems, but Garnet interrupts as they introduce themselves in a flashy manner, stating their names and then transforming into adorable beach outfits. Kofi exclaims that he believes that they're a circus act. The gems and pizzas all sit down to eat, and the gems explain that they don't need to eat. Jenny comments on the decrepit state of the temple, which eventually leads to Kofi saying that the gems have a lazy attitude towards broken things, just like the sign at his shop. Steven nervously intervenes by asking if they would like to play volleyball. Steven finishes making the court and then picks the teams, Amethyst with Jenny, Pearl with Kiki, Garnet with Kofi, and himself with Nanafwa. Pearl and Kiki win their point against Amethyst and Jenny after Amethyst's failed attempt to kick the ball. The second attempt goes to Amethyst and Jenny when Amethyst spikes the ball after transforming into a tennis racket. Which feels like cheating, but it's whatever. The next match is won by Kofi and Garnet against Amethyst and Jenny when Kofi threatens to ground Jenny if she touches the ball, causing her to miss the hit. For the next point, Amethyst sends the ball flying into the air, but Garnet jumps higher and slams it with such force that the ball craters the ground and forms glass shards out of the sand. Nanafwa explains to Steven that sand crystallizes into glass at superheated temperatures. At this point, each team is shown using cheap tactics to win points, Pearl using hologram-esque clones, Kofi threatening to take away privileges, etc., resulting in teams beginning to argue loudly about how each is cheating at the game. Nanafwa claims that this is getting out of hand, so Steven decides to go get the ball. As Steven runs after the ball, it begins to blow backward, and the pufferfish appears around the corner of the temple. Steven runs back to the still arguing group and warns them. The gems then quickly grab the pizza family and jump off behind cover as Steven and Nanafwa hide behind a rock formation. Steven begins to place guilt on himself about putting everyone in danger, but Nanafwa claims that she's not afraid of that thing and runs toward the pufferfish, further proving that Nanafwa is probably the best inhabitant of Beach City. Steven follows her as they begin to distract the fish by running in circles underneath her. As they do so, Steven and Nanafwa begin to shout orders at the others for Amethyst to transform into a ball, Jenny to roll her to the net, and Pearl to jump over to them. Nanafwa orders Pearl to hit Amethyst in ball form into the air as hard as she can. Nanafwa orders Kofi and Kiki to head over to the net while Steven orders Garnet to spike the beach with Amethyst, to which Amethyst asks her to be gentle, and does so, resulting in a massive glass shard formation. Steven and Nanafwa lead the pufferfish towards the net, where they command everyone to pull the net towards her face. They manage to push the pufferfish back until she presses up against the glass shard. However, they can't place enough pressure to poof her. Garnet shoots her down from up high, punching the fish into the shards, resulting in a massive cloud of sand and dust, finally poofing the pufferfish. Later on, Kofi thanks the gems for saving his family and officially unbans them from his store. Steven says that they greatly appreciate it, but Pearl asks what they were banned from to begin with, causing him to laugh nervously as the episode ends. Rose's room. The episode begins with Steven finishing off a can of creamed corn. The gems walk in from the temple door, and Steven excitedly tells him that he's eaten 4 cans of creamed corn due to there being a $5 coupon for mini golf because he wants to go with them. Unfortunately, the gems have to leave on a mission and can't hang out with Steven. He decides to play Golf Quest Mini to pass the time and ends up beating the final boss. Just as the gems return from their mission, Steven reaches a secret ending cutscene to the game. The gems unintentionally distract Steven while he's watching the video, Amethyst blocking his view, Garnet showing him an ancient object that they found called the Wailing Stone, and Pearl explaining what it does. You know, normal gem stuff. Amethyst presses the button on the Wailing Stone, which produces a deafening sound wave and causes Steven's TV to break. Pearl deactivates it and then proceeds to scold Amethyst, but Amethyst claims that Steven loved the Wailing Stone. As they yell, Steven vents his frustration of not being able to control anything in his life, not getting to play his mini-golf game, not seeing the secret ending, not being able to stop going to the bathroom after eating all of the cans of creamed corn. Steven then says that he wishes for a place just for himself. At this, his gem glows and activates the door to his mother's room. The gems tell him not to go inside, but he runs in yelling at them about never being able to do what he wants and claims that he has a place where he's going and that the gems won't be allowed to follow. The door to the room seals and disappears, locking the gems out. Steven then proceeds to explore his mother's room. When he notes the lack of a bed, one appears out of nowhere. He realizes the room could give him anything he asks for, after asking for a quadruple bunk bed with a slide and a tiny floating whale. Steven then asks to watch the secret ending of his game without being interrupted. After he watches the ending again, he starts to feel hungry. The room then gives him a donut, but it disappears into a cloud when he tries to bite it. He then asks for a real donut, but it disappears again. Wanting an actual donut, he walks out of the room to get food, but when he exits the room, the gems aren't around. When he steps out into Beach City, he sees that it's night and hardly anyone is on the streets. At the Big Donut, he finds Lars and Sadie standing side by side, smiling and staring at him creepily. The two are unnaturally still and unresponsive. When they do talk, they speak in stilted dialogue in unison. Steven asks for 1 donut, but is given a bag of 3. Lars and Sadie then slide away toward the back of the store. Steven gives chase and exits the Big Donut through the back door and sees Sadie and Lars have disappeared. He finds Onion standing under a streetlight. He offers him a donut, but Onion only moves his eyes. Steven puts it on top of his hair and departs. Steven walks down the boardwalk, wondering where everyone is. He passes Beach City Walk Fries, does a double take, and sees Frybo in the window, who offers him some fry bits. Steven, assuming that it's Petey, attempts to talk to him, but Frybo keeps putting the fry bits through each other in the same spot, like, he puts them down, and it just, like, replaces them. It's like a glitch in the Matrix. Steven obviously gets spooked by this and leaves to look around some more. He walks around Beach City Funland, passing the rides and stopping in front of the arcade. Meat Beat Mania instantly turns on, which shocks Steven. He runs towards the beach and sees Connie looking out at the ocean. He's surprised to see her because she's supposed to be out of town. He looks down and sees that the water seems to be looping, only barely touching her boots, and asks her what's happening. Connie turns around and is stuck on repeat, saying he was incredible, exactly the way she said it in Bubble Buddies. Steven turns around and sees all the citizens of Beach City with their faces drastically simplified. Steven runs away, but not before seeing Lion, not moving, also with a changed face. The ground turns into water and he falls through, ending up at his dad's car wash. Greg comes outside and Steven is relieved to see someone acting like their usual self. Everything finally seems normal again as Steven shares donuts with his dad and explains how he's sorry that he yelled at the gems and is just feeling left behind. Greg comforts Steven with some words of wisdom. However, when Steven wonders about the current state of Beach City, Greg starts reciting ill-suited platitudes. Steven realizes something is still wrong. He tries to bite into the donut, but it disappears. He then comes to the conclusion that he's been in the room this whole time. Upon his realization, Beach City and everything in it starts disappearing in large chunks. He runs up the cliff overlooking the town but falls into oblivion as everything disappears. Steven whimpers that he doesn't want this. The tiny floating whale reappears and asks him what he does want in a serene voice, to which he concludes that he wants to be back with the gems. Steven finally falls out of the room and lands on Garnet back in the house. Steven tests if it's really her by chomping on her forearm. Garnet responds with, "Ow," and Amethyst joyously follows with chomping on Pearl's arm, who shrieks in pain. Steven recounts that the room tried to recreate the whole town to the astounded gems. Pearl states that this is beyond its capability and expresses relief for Steven's well-being. Steven apologizes for snapping at them earlier, revealing that he now understands that he can't get everything he wants all the time. The gems apologize as well, and the four of them go mini-golfing with their newly acquired free time. Garnet even wears Greg's golf pants. The episode ends with Steven exclaiming he always gets what he wants before the usual cut to black. Coach Steven. The episode begins with Garnet, Amethyst, Pearl, and Steven warping to the former Crystal Gem communication hub. Pearl explains that it's releasing bursts of electromagnetic interference and needs to be destroyed, inciting a confused response from Steven. Garnet then tells Steven that it's hurting television, which manages to sufficiently motivate Steven to help out. As a joke, Amethyst transforms into a more muscular version of Steven and starts punching the pillars. Pearl stops Amethyst, telling her that they would need a more well-thought-out plan in order to destroy the hub. Garnet decides to use Sugalite, a fusion of Garnet and Amethyst, despite Pearl's warning against the plan that Sugalite is a dangerous entity. Garnet states that they don't need to be careful, they just need to be huge. As Pearl struggles to cover Steven's eyes, Garnet and Amethyst then fuse via a synchronized dance, creating Sugalite. She forms her special weapon, a combination of Garnet's interlocking gauntlets and Amethyst's whip, forming a weapon similar to a flail. Sugalite then uses the flail to begin smashing pillars. Pearl becomes frustrated and worried and tells Steven that they're going home, disappointing Steven. Steven is hit with debris from Sugalite's carnage, and Pearl hastily warps them away just before a boulder crushes the warp pad. Steven goes to the Big Donut to visit Lars and Sadie. His head is wrapped in bandages and he dons a pair of sunglasses, both in order to cover the cut he received from the rock. Lars and Sadie start to laugh as Steven displays his tiny injury, with Lars telling Steven to toughen up and be a man. Ironically, he then struggles to open a jar of herring, which Sadie easily opens for him. Steven then comes up with the idea to exercise as a group and suggests Greg should be their coach. Greg builds basic workout equipment for the group. He also decides to join their workout, saying he'd missed out on exercising for decades. Steven goes to his house for sweatbands and meets Pearl inside. Pearl asks what he's doing outside, and Steven explains that he wants to be strong like Sugalite. You know, strong in the real way. Pearl goes inside the house and begins to sing the song with the same title while picking up Steven's clothes. Steven starts the workout with Greg, Sadie, and Lars, and he begins singing where Pearl left off in the song. Greg, Lars, and Sadie are up and ready the next morning for the day's workout, but Steven is sore from exercising yesterday. Regardless, he gets up and finds Pearl downstairs, questioning where Sugalite is, noticing that the warp pad is down because Sugalite inadvertently destroyed it after Pearl and Steven left, unbeknownst to Pearl. Outside, Sugalite is seen walking home, angrily wading through the ocean. When Sugalite reaches the beach, she says that she's bored and complains that Pearl left her behind. Pearl replying that she thought Sugalite didn't need help, Pearl suggests that Sugalite separate back into Garnet and Amethyst, to which Sugalite replies by suddenly kicking her. Pearl tells Sugalite that they, Garnet and Amethyst, have been fused together too long. Sugalite refuses to split apart and in her rage destroys Greg's gym. Steven concernedly asks why Sugalite destroyed his dad's gym and why she's attacking Pearl. Pearl tells Steven to get out of the area and throws him behind a ridge. Pearl retrieves her spear and starts to fight Sugalite in an attempt to separate her back into Amethyst and Garnet, though Sugalite hits her with a harsh strike. Greg moves in and grabs Steven to move him away from the conflict, much to Steven's disdain. Pearl launches another attack, knocking off Sugalite's shades. This infuriates her further, prompting her to headbutt Pearl downwards, smack her into the air again, and then slam her back down into the ground with a two-handed overhead strike. Sugalite then swings her weapon at Pearl, knocking away Steven and Greg as well. Pearl, seemingly unable to fight any longer, then gives up right before Sugilite is about to destroy her, stating that she's sorry to Steven, Garnet, and Amethyst and that she isn't strong enough to protect anybody or do anything. Steven then tells Pearl via his bullhorn that he was using earlier to coordinate his workout that he knows she can take her down and how she always knows what to do. Steven's motivation encourages Pearl to get up, ready to take down Sugilite. Pearl looks at the top of the Crystal Temple and seems to formulate a plan. She taunts Sugilite, to which she replies by attacking with a punch. She misses and Pearl begins to run up the cliff, Sugilite chasing close behind. Upon reaching the top of the cliff, Pearl leaps off as Sugilite twirls her flail for an attack, throwing her spear at the cliff directly below one of Sugilite's feet, crumbling the portion and causing Sugilite to lose her footing and fall. Sugilite quickly recovers, asking Pearl if she really thought she'd be able to defeat her, before being cut off by the end portion of her flail then coming down on top of her head, causing her to split back into Garnet and Amethyst in a puff of purple smoke. Both are left face down in the sand. Pearl rushes over and asks the two if they're okay. Garnet explains how Sugilite overworked their bodies, so she agrees that Pearl is right. Pearl suddenly becomes very excited and proud of herself, and as a result, she enthusiastically hugs the fallen gems. Immediately after, she notices that both are in pain and apologizes. Steven says to Pearl, "You did it!" and she thanks him. Garnet tells Pearl that she's right, and that they should have listened to her. Pearl replies that she is right, and Steven cheers her on, after which she suggests that they go on a mission. The episode ends with Amethyst asking how long Pearl is going to keep this up, Garnet saying that they deserved it, Lars questioning to what the hell just happened, and Steven shouting, "Drop and give me 20" into his bullhorn. Joking victim. Steven is sitting on a bench next to the Beach City Pier when Amethyst approaches him, suspiciously asking if he wants to try some of her fries. He enthusiastically agrees and eats some, only to discover they're laced with fire salt. Desperate for something to drink, Steven rushes to the big donut and causes a huge mess on which Lars slips on. When Sadie tells Lars to clean it up, he complains about hurting his back and earns the day off from an overly worried Sadie. Once he leaves, Sadie remarks on how she won't be able to run the store on her own, and Steven volunteers to help. Steven officially dubs Steven Lars for the day and shows him a tour of the Big Donut's employee room. She shows him the extra supplies, napkins, which she sleeps on when she's tired, and donuts, which are shipped from a baking company. Steven questions why the Big Donut doesn't make their own donuts, which Sadie answers that they did, but not since the accident. She then shows Steven a presumably extremely long training video starring a younger Mr. Smiley, a former actor-singer. After the video is done, the two get to work. While working, Mr. Smiley comes in and sings along with an enthusiastic Steven to his previous training video, who then makes a remark about Mr. Smiley's former career, much to Mr. Smiley's disappointment. After the day is nearly done, Sadie jokes that the two should call Lars and tell him Steven has replaced him. Excited, Steven agrees, but when he learns that it's a joke, he subtly tells Sadie that she should just fire him since he's such a jerk. At first, Sadie starts to agree but defends him and says that he's a nice person once you get to know him. She then tells Steven that when she and Lars were younger, Lars had wanted a video game, but was banned from the only place in town that sold it. Lars had asked Sadie to wait in the long line to get it for him. Once she had brought the game over to his house, she saw that Lars had gotten her a large box of oyster crackers, which are Sadie's favorite, in return for the game, and let her be his player too. Sadie then remarks that they spent the rest of the night together and that it was sweet of him to let her do so. Steven suggests that they should do something nice for Lars in return. After work, Steven and Sadie head over to Lars' house with a box of donuts, and much to their surprise, see the fish stew pizza car parked in front of the house already. Steven assumes that Lars had already ordered pizza, but sees that he had invited over Jenny, Buck, and Sour Cream to hang out on his trampoline. Jenny bumps into Lars, much to Sadie's horror, and thanks him for inviting them over, to which Lars bashfully admits that he has the whole day off due to him faking his back injury. Sad and angry, Sadie runs in front of the house and starts to back away once she sees the pizza car. Steven comforts and reassures Sadie that she doesn't need him. Angrily sobbing, Sadie remarks that Lars had made a fool of her and has burned her too many times, so just once, she wants to burn him back. Steven tells Sadie that he knows how to burn someone and tells her to go home. The next day at work, Sadie watches TV while Steven comes in with the fire salt that Amethyst had pranked him with, telling Sadie that they should go prank Lars with it. At first, Sadie grabs the bottle from Steven and refuses to go with the idea, but after seeing Lars come in and dramatically fake his injury for another day off, much to her rage, she angrily puts a large amount of it on a donut. Sadie then approaches Lars and asks him about his back. Lars says that it still hurts, but says he knows that he can count on Sadie to help, calling her P2. Sadie tells him to relax and have the fire salt covered donut, warning him that it's hot. As Lars takes a bite out of the donut, Steven laughs at Sadie's pun about the donut being hot, and Lars finally reacts to the fire salt. Due to the great amount of fire salt on the donut, Lars starts to breathe fire and damages the Big Donut's interior. Panicking and desperate for something cool, Lars runs out of the store and wreaks havoc among Beach City with his breath. Chasing him down, Sadie and Steven put out the fires Lars has started in the city. In an amazing stroke of timing, Mayor Dewey unveils a large bowl containing the largest amount of ice cream in Beach County, to which Lars melts with his flaming breath. Eventually, Lars, Sadie, and Steven head to the pier where Amethyst is hanging out. Amethyst asks Steven why Donut Guy is breathing fire, to which Steven replies that he put too much fire salt on a donut that they pranked Lars with. Angry at this discovery, Lars holds down his fire breath and starts to chase Steven. Through the smoke and flames, Sadie then confronts Lars and tells him that it's her who pranked him. She tells him that after everything she's done for him, he still likes to hang out with other people. She says that she thought about the night they played video games and can't stop thinking of him as a good person since then. Holding Lars' hand, she then starts to say something else, but stops and asks him if calling her Player 2 is just another way of saying she could have been anyone. Lars tries to reply but starts to choke on the flaming donut, in which Steven performs the Heimlich maneuver on Lars, which is something he learned from the Big Donut training video. While doing so, he sings the jingle from the video that he learned while performing the actions. Sadie then puts out the flames on the donut and starts to put out the rest of the fires caused by Lars. As Lars approaches Sadie, she states that she won't apologize to him, but Lars says that he wants to help and understands if she wants to be alone. Sadie then realizes that Lars does care about her and tells Lars that he can stay and help, but not before getting him water and a not burned shirt. A proud Steven looks on while Amethyst tells him that the two, she and Steven, make a good team, with Steven realizing that Amethyst didn't do anything to help at all. Amethyst shrugs her shoulders and the star zooms onto her face. Steven and the Stevens. The episode begins with the gems in the sea shrine looking for the hourglass. Steven picks out the smallest hourglass. Pearl tells him that the hourglass wouldn't be so small and insignificant, it would be beautiful and grand. Garnet chooses the biggest hourglass in the sea shrine. Pearl asks how they're going to transport it to the warp pad, and Garnet claims that she can carry it. Pearl stops her, saying that they need to be careful which one they touch, reminding her what happened last time. Amethyst then makes the call by grabbing an abstract designed hourglass. As she grabs it, the sea shrine's roof breaks, resulting in a large amount of water pouring into the shrine. The gems are about to leave, but Steven wants to get the small hourglass that he picked earlier because Amethyst got to keep hers. He runs and gets the hourglass, and as he runs back, a huge wave of water flows towards him. Garnet shape-shifts her hand, making it large enough to pull Steven away from the danger. The gems then warp out of the sea shrine and back into the beach house. When the gems get back to the house, Steven asks if they'll return to the sea shrine. Pearl then angrily says that they, unfortunately, have to wait another 100 years for the sea shrine to reform. Garnet then changes the subject by telling her that there's a lobster on her butt, to Pearl's dismay. A cookie cat-shaped alarm clock starts to ring, and Steven is reminded of the upcoming Beach-a-Palooza, which he's to be performing in with his father. He leaves the house, saying goodbye to the gems and that it was fun on the mission. Steven goes to It's a Wash to meet his father for the rehearsal, but can't rehearse with him as Yellowtail's boat is stuck in the car wash. Steven leaves, disappointed, saying that he wishes that the stupid boat wasn't stuck there in the first place. He suddenly gets teleported back in time, confused at first, but soon glad to realize that he can prevent the boat from getting stuck. He runs to his father, calling, "It's fat! It's fat!" Greg stops Yellowtail from backing into the car wash. Steven realizes the hourglass took him back in time with joy. But while Greg tries to explain to Yellowtail that the boat is fat, the truck pulling the boat moves backwards and hits a pole, which breaks and crashes onto the truck, sets the car wash ablaze. Steven then wishes he could go back in time to stop himself from stopping his father. He goes back and manages to stop himself. Both Stevens then decide to create a band and go back in time to get more Stevens. The scene cuts to 4 Stevens singing the song Steven and the Stevens. After the song, they decide the original Steven should be the leader of the band. Steven 1 then labels the other 3 Stevens, 2, 3, and 4. He states that Steven 2 is the smart one, Steven 3 is the funny one, and Steven 4 is the sensitive one. Steven 1 then brushes his hair up and labels himself the handsome one. Steven 4 then says something funny. Steven tells 4 that Steven 3 is the funny one, but then Steven 3 says they're all equally prone to being hilarious. Steven 1 says that that's too smart of an observation. 2 then asks who he is again, and 1, getting rather frustrated, tells him that he's supposed to be the smart one. Steven 4 then asks if they're not all good looking since 1 is the handsome one. The other 2 Stevens disagree and suggest they all get jobs as models. Steven 1 then says that none of them is the handsome one, making all the other Stevens feel sad. Steven 1 then decides that they should take a 5-minute break. Steven goes outside and says that he can't believe he's so annoying. He considers quitting the music industry when suddenly he hears a loud racket. He enters the house to see that all 3 Stevens are playing loud music and asks them to stop. The other 3 Stevens decide to kick him out of the band, saying that his attitude isn't working for them. Steven 1 angrily objects about being kicked out and tells the other Stevens that without him they would be nothing. This suddenly gives 1 the idea to go back in time to stop himself from ever creating the band. The other 3 Stevens pursue him to different timelines, as far back as Gem Glow and to Rose's room, which create more Stevens. Then they go to Ocean Gem, where Steven 1 asks the Hourglass to go back to the beginning. Steven gets teleported to the beginning of the episode and asks the Steven there to give him the Hourglass. Suddenly, all the other clones teleport to exactly the same place. Steven finally gets the Hourglass, but stops laughing maniacally when he sees how scared his past self is. He sees all the chaos he's created and shouts to all the other Stevens to stop. They all stop and realize their mistakes, and Steven destroys the Hourglass of Time in order to bring things back to where they were. All the copies of the Hourglass get destroyed along with the Stevens, and before all the Stevens disappear, the last Steven tells the Steven of the beginning that Greg can't play the Beach-a-Palooza because of the boat being fat. He kisses Steven and tells him to stay cool before disintegrating, leaving a very confused and shocked Steven. Steven still participates in the concert, except this time with the Crystal Gems, singing a song much like Steven and the Stevens, but now it's Steven and the Crystal Gems. He learned to stay true to himself by watching himself die. Monster Buddies. The Gems and Steven are first shown fighting an ice monster, which is actually a corrupted Larimar, in a snowy mountain while trying to acquire a powerful artifact called the Shooting Star. Garnet slams Larimar into a wall, causing the ice ceiling to start caving in. The rocks begin to fall on Amethyst, and Garnet bubbles Steven, much to Pearl's objection, warping him back to the temple. He breaks out of the bubble, accidentally popping the bubble containing Nephrite's gem as well. Nephrite, whom is dubbed Centipedal, reforms small in size and is scared, so Steven tells her to relax. However, the crystal gems come back and see Centipedal out. They think that she's a threat, with Garnet about to poof her, but Steven tells him that she didn't harm him at all and that he'll try to train her. Garnet allows it, although Pearl still thinks that she's dangerous. Garnet tells Steven that she thinks he can tame Centipedal. On the beach, the gems have secured Centipedal to a rock with chains and have summoned their weapons in case she does any harm. However, Steven wants the gems to put away their weapons and go back in the house. Pearl objects, but Garnet insists that Steven can do it. Once inside, Centipedal breaks free from the chains. Steven begins trying to calm Centipedal by feeding her some Chips brand potato chips. This works well until a seagull flies down and bites Steven's hand, trying to eat the chips from it. Centipedal spits acid at the seagull to protect Steven, causing the seagull to fly away scared. Steven eagerly runs up to the house, wanting to show the gems Centipedal's new trick. Every time Steven squawks like a seagull, Centipedal spits a stream of acid. One stream almost hits Garnet, another melts a picture of Pearl off the refrigerator, and another knocks a sandwich out of Amethyst's hand and melts it, much to her dismay. Steven suggests that Centipedal could help them on missions, but Pearl immediately dismisses the idea. However, Garnet thinks that the creature's acid venom could be the only way to continue through the ice cavern without causing a cave-in. The gems and Steven eventually make their way through the cavern to the room containing the shooting star. Pearl explains that the shooting star is far too hot to touch with bare skin and that Garnet should use her gauntlets. Garnet summons her gauntlets, and the sight of them causes Centipedal to get frightened and spew acid all over the ceiling, causing large amounts of ice and rock to fall. Pearl says that she knew bringing the creature was a bad idea and knocks her into the wall hard with her spear, accidentally causing a large stalactite to loosen from the ceiling. Garnet and Amethyst continue to attack Centipedal as Steven tries to convince them to stop. Amethyst accidentally pulls Centipedal directly into herself, Garnet, and Pearl, knocking the three over. As Centipedal is about to attack them, Steven approaches her crying and asks her to stop. He tells her that she doesn't need to fight or be a monster anymore. He then hugs Centipedal, calming her down. The stalactite breaks from the ceiling and falls straight for Steven, but Centipedal pushes him out of the way, sacrificing herself to save Steven. Garnet comforts Steven, telling her that he did a good job raising Centipedal and that his mother would be proud of him. She explains that Rose Quartz once used her powers to try to heal the monsters, but was unable to do so. Steven begins to feel discouraged, but Pearl tells him that maybe one day when he gains more control of his powers, he may be able to do things even his mother couldn't. Much to everyone's surprise, Steven bubbles a gemstone for the first time and vows to fully heal Centipedal someday. He transports the gem back to the temple along with the bag of chips, and the episode ends with the two star-shaped irises closing in on the bubbles containing both the gemstone and the chips. An Indirect Kiss. The episode begins with Steven being carried by Lion to go to the top of the temple to meet Connie Maheshwaran for a picnic. Connie notices that there's a fence around the cliff and she wants to know why. Steven tells her what happened. His story starts with Amethyst goofing around a cliff and Steven telling Amethyst not to fall off. She continues messing with Steven, who's becoming more and more worried for her safety as she continues. Unsurprisingly, she falls off and lands on a rock with her gem suffering a severe crack. Steven runs down the cliff quickly, worried about her. Amethyst shoots him her eye hidden behind her bangs, which has enlarged itself to become big and googly and weird. Garnet and Pearl run to them to try to get Amethyst to show her gem. Garnet reveals Amethyst's gem has been cracked, which results in the crystal gems building a fence around the cliff. Steven ends the story, but Connie wants to know what happened to Amethyst. He doesn't want to tell her, but agrees to continue on the condition that she let him try on her glasses. Connie agrees, but only with the further condition that Steven gives her his juice. After this whole trade is worked out, he continues the story. It cuts back to the gems talking about Amethyst. As they speak, Pearl and Garnet reveal that Rose Quartz had healing tears. Steven tries to heal Amethyst's gem with tears, but is unable to cry. For, like, the first time in his life, apparently, because Steven cries at everything. Garnet insists that they go to Rose's healing spring to heal Amethyst. Amethyst makes a weird shriveled face and begins talking backward, implying that her crack is getting worse. They make their way to the fountain, but almost everything is covered with brambles. Steven tries again, but is still unable to cry. Amethyst attempts to communicate with Steven through pantomime as her speech is now unintelligible. After realizing that Amethyst was suggesting using pain to cause tears, Steven attempts to poke himself on nearby thorns. However, the thorns come to life and try to attack him. Amethyst tackles him out of the way, but this further cracks her gem, which causes her head to be swapped with her right foot. Garnet and Pearl, oblivious to the plant's sentience, proceed to make a path through the wall of thorns. Once through the spring, they see that it too has become overgrown and was no longer flowing with healing water. Garnet and Pearl leave to find out what stopped the spring, as Amethyst's condition worsens by her limbs growing long and thin. The thorns once again attack Steven and Amethyst, so Steven drags Amethyst into the dry spring to protect her. After, Steven is sad that he couldn't save Amethyst and starts to cry, finally. A tear hits the broken gem, however, nothing happens. Steven becomes extremely upset by this development. Suddenly, the spring, which is a statue of Rose Quartz, begins to work, which causes a massive overflow of healing water, which causes the thorns to bloom into roses, and Amethyst to return to normal. Steven exclaims to Pearl how his tears caused the spring to be fixed. Pearl responds that she and Garnet were the real reason behind the renewed spring, and that he'll never have any real magic powers, and that they no longer want to do anything with him. Cutting back to the present day, Connie is shocked. Steven admits that maybe that's not what they said, but it's how he felt. Connie tells him that he can always come to her, magic or not, and leans in for a kiss only to stop short and exclaims that she has a headache. After taking her glasses off, she realizes that she can see without them. Both are shocked, and they realize that Steven's juice, which he foreshadows by stating the juice box trade was his spit mostly, healed her. The episode ends with Steven rushing off to the gems to tell them about his new healing saliva ability while Connie pops the lenses out of her glasses. Mirror Gem. Steven is talking to Connie on the phone, and she informs him that they can now hang out more often since school is out for summer vacation. Steven is confused about the concept of school since he's never been to one, so he gets Pearl to set one up, although it's unsuccessful. When Pearl finds out that school is about learning, she summons a gem mirror to try to teach him. She says that they found it at the Galaxy Warp, and it can show him any event in gem history. They then try it out, but when it doesn't work, Pearl assumes that it's broken and allows Steven to keep it. Steven takes the mirror out onto the beach and bumps into Lars and Sadie, and talks with them about their plans for summer vacation. Lars suggests he's looking forward to the summer, making a mature implication, and Sadie says that she hopes to find a new friend. Steven agrees with Sadie, saying that he hopes to make a new beach summer fun buddy, and walks off towards the boardwalk. As he wanders around town, he walks onto the road without seeing Mayor Dewey's van. The mirror suddenly warns him of the danger by playing back a memory it has seen, and Steven yells out in panic, stopping the vehicle. After Mayor Dewey drives away, Steven concludes that the mirror is like a person and can communicate by using bits of sentences it hears and by combining them to speak. Amazed, Steven plays with it all day, then comes back home to inform the gems of his discovery. They're stunned and fearful that the mirror has a personality. Pearl and Amethyst both seem apprehensive, Pearl saying that it should only be following orders, and Amethyst asking Garnet to do something. Garnet then walks over to Steven, and the mirror shows again its fear with the clip of Steven screaming in protest. Garnet then orders Steven to give it to her, saying it'll be safer with her. The mirror keeps playing the screaming clip in a loop, frightening and confusing Steven. He pleads with Garnet to not take the mirror, saying that it doesn't want to go with her, but she attempts to assure him that it's just an object and can't want anything. As she reaches closer to the mirror, Steven swipes his hand at her, saying that it wants to be with him, but accidentally slaps Garnet and her visor falls to the ground, shocking everyone. Garnet stares furiously at a terrified Steven, who runs out the door, screaming and apologizing while running down the beach. She then says that Steven is in big trouble, while Pearl insists to Garnet that it was only an accident and he didn't mean to slap her. All 3 gems proceed out the door after him. Hiding behind a rock on the beach, Steven pleads with the mirror to tell him what he can do to help. The mirror shows him that he needs to take the gemstone out of the back of the mirror, with a visual demonstration appearing on the mirror face. When he begins to pull at the gemstone, the water around him forms a pattern, and when he finally tugs it out, the mirror breaks. In front of him, the gem he removed reforms into a humanoid form, unmoving. Steven walks up to the mysterious gem, who gets up and subsequently introduces herself as Lapis Lazuli, a gem with the ability to manipulate water. She thanks him for setting her free and questions whether he really is a crystal gem, wondering why he talked and helped her. Garnet yells for Steven. The crystal gems find them and pull out their weapons. To stop them from fighting Lapis, Steven runs in front of the gems. Lapis recognizes Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl as crystal gems, however, and attacks in a rage, stating that they knew she was trapped in the mirror, but did nothing to help her. She tells Steven to come home with her, whose hesitance prompts her to tell him not to trust the gems, while Garnet charges at her. Lapis walks into the ocean, escaping and blocking out Garnet's attack with a wave. Pearl, concerned, embraces Steven, who seems bewildered but otherwise unharmed. The episode ends with Garnet informing Steven that he's grounded. Okay, and that was part 1 of season 1 of The Life of Steven Universe. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.